Hello everybody, this is Valentina. I have a brilliant idea. Why don't we take this Douglas F-4D airplane and we use it to launch rockets, because it is an airplane that can fly horizontally already, and we can then attach a rocket right here to this wing and then we can launch the rocket into space and it's going to be awesome. What do you think about that? Let's do it. And welcome to What the Math. Okay, that didn't work very well. Welcome to What the Math, everyone. This is going to be episode 6 of the history of space program, and we are flying in the air with just one wing on our beautiful Douglas F-4D1 Skyray airplane. This is an airplane that was around in the mid to late 50s and it is no more, just like that. Now, this airplane was used to launch one of the first rocket satellites. In other words, it was one of the first. Okay, I'm just gonna quit this, and I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about in the VAB, or let me show it to you from the launch pad. So, what was US planning? What was actual plan here? And the plan was to launch this sort of ugly-looking rocket into space from an airplane, but to do that they wanted to test it from the ground first, so the first 4 launches were from the ground. Now, the mission name for this was Pilot 1. Obviously Pilot 2 for the second one, Pilot 3 for the third one, and so on. And there were in total 10 missions, but unfortunately all 10 failed miserably. None of them succeeded to make it into even a lower orbit, even though there were rumors that maybe some of them actually were heard beeping from space, but all of them were rumors. Now, why do we not know for certain? Well, because this mission was actually super secret until 1994. For like 40 years, nobody knew anything about it. Unfortunately, US really tried to keep it a secret because it was such an embarrassment and such a failure, and because of its actual goals. Now, let's launch this, and I'm going to talk about the goals of this mission. I'm going to show you how this works. So there were actually several stages here, and all of them were based on solid boosters. None of these actually had any moving parts as well, so this was basically kind of a fire and forget type of rocket, so the trajectory had to be calculated really precisely. So the first 2 boosters would fire here, then after a few seconds, about 10 or so, the second 2 boosters would fire as well, and this would give the rocket more acceleration. And these were basically just to get more speed while in the air, while in the lower atmosphere. Now, so obviously the first mission, or the first goal of this mission, was to launch a small rocket from an airplane, which would be the first in the world, and it would possibly save some fuel as well, and it'd be more effective, more efficient, more fast. You could launch an airplane a lot faster than you could launch a rocket. Okay, so here comes the next stage, and underneath this we had another solid booster. It would then propel rocket even higher. Now, the second mission, or the second goal of this mission, was to try to launch the first in the world satellite destroyer. In other words, this rocket was meant to reach space and then destroy satellites. So underneath that thing was probably a warhead. Now, because this rocket had no moving parts, it had another stage on top, and this was basically when you would reach a part in your orbit. So if you were to kind of fly in the orbit around the planet, when you would reach this part, you would fire this, because you would be pointing your back forwards and your forward part backwards now. So you would now launch this part to get even more speed to circularize your orbit. This was obviously the original plan. This is how it was designed. This is how it was constructed. And this particular rocket even had a strange name. It actually was called NOTSnik, also known as NOTS, which is why in US circles and space circles, this was known as, or also known as, NOTSnik, which is why this video is called NOTSnik, because that was the name of this particular mission. Now, obviously, it didn't really rotate that well. Or I mean, it didn't spin that much when it was actually launched. But you know what? They never even got to test that last stage. So maybe it did spin that much. we will never know, because this mission was cancelled literally after months of its inception. Unfortunately, this mission was a complete failure, and it was replaced by another mission called Caleb, which was also not very successful, but it was a slightly better rocket at least. Now, the cool thing about this rocket is obviously the design itself. So it was actually designed really, really well. And also the fact that it was launched from an airplane, which we're going to do in a second. So let's switch to airplane mode and launch it again. And so here we are with Bill Kerman as our pilot and two of these rockets attached to our wings. Two because it just makes things a little bit easier when we're flying this airplane. We don't really know how many there were on the actual Douglas airplane, but it was probably something. It was probably balanced by something else on the other wing. So yeah, we have two of them. We're going to launch two at the same time. I wasn't initially going to use KOS, but I actually decided to just fly this manually because, well, first of all, it's actually relatively hard to write the script for KOS to fly a rocket of this caliber and to actually make it into space successfully. And it's not because of the actual script, but because for some reason my rocket is actually controlled from this little part attachment here, not from the actual octo unit that's inside of this. It's not controlled from there, it's actually controlled from this. I don't know why. Go figure. Probably a bug in the game. But anyway, so this is the airplane, this is these are the rockets attached to it, and this was the mission launched in early to mid 1958. After they tested these on the ground and they kind of failed miserably, the fifth launch was from the airplane. They thought maybe it's gonna fly better from the airplane, so they launched 6 more using the Douglas airplanes. And interestingly, these rockets were actually not the original designs. These were copied from so-called sub-rock anti-submarine missiles, which were actually quite successful at, you know, reaching submarines, because this is what they were meant for. So they thought maybe if they can reach a submarine, they can reach a satellite. So why not? Let's try one. Anyway, so let's launch. Bill Kerman is happy about this, I hope. And we're going to try to launch them from space. Not from space, sorry, from atmosphere, not from space. We're not going to space at all. We're going to the atmosphere. So my Douglas is flying really, really well, even though it's not a particularly perfect design, but it's kind of, it looks relatively nice. It looks like an airplane from the 50s, and it does perform quite nicely. So I'm gonna maybe go a little bit higher, a little bit faster, and then we're going to launch these rockets. And here we are approaching upper atmosphere, so I'm going to possibly actually go a little bit more steeper so that I can get a little bit more inclination here, and then release my rockets as soon as I get to a nice enough altitude, and then let them take over, do their own thing on their own. Now, we're not entirely sure how this has been done, what the actual flight was like, what the actual altitude was like, where and when the rockets were released, because like I said, the mission was relatively secret. But judging by what SpaceX is doing nowadays and how it actually launches in their case, I'm assuming, or we're going to assume, that this airplane was going relatively high and was probably going with a somewhat steep inclination before it released the rockets. And I'm going to switch the rockets now, actually just one of them, and then we're going to launch our boosters 1, boosters 2. There we go. Now this other rocket is going to just go by itself and probably just fall down. There's their airplane, and we're going to go faster than the airplane and overcome the thing. Alright, cool. I disabled the temperature gauges so that things don't explode, even though they probably will. And what we're going to do now is essentially observe the rocket in flight and try to simulate the mission if it was successful. I have a feeling I'm going to lose one of my winglets in a second because I'm going super ultra fast. And I'm going a little bit faster than I should be going. And we're going to release the couplings. Oh, there we go. Things exploded! And we have one more stage here on the bottom. We're gonna blast it horizontally. Even though this rocket had no more parts, no moving parts, that is, our rocket does, because we are playing Kerbal space program that has moving parts. Now I'm already going above required orbital speed. That's because I actually launched a little bit too late in my flight. So we're going to actually release this last part. Switch to this again, and now I have to do this manually, but I'm going to launch my 4th stage manually by pointing at this direction right here. There we go. 4th stage, go. And so now the way this would work in real life is the rocket would then reach the apoapsis, which we're gonna wait for. We're gonna warp there. Reach the apoapsis, not move at all. And because it wouldn't be moving at all, it would now be pointing with its other face towards the vector of velocity. And so now which we're gonna simulate by just pointing retrograde. Now we would launch our last stage, which is actually on our face. And then this was hopefully going to be enough to... Oh, no. Here we go. Okay, good. Ah, no, didn't work. All right, this mission is a failure. But this was supposed to circularize our orbit, and it would give us enough boost to actually get into orbit. Now, just like the original pilot, I have just failed. Not as miserably as the original pilot, but I failed nonetheless. And we're now basically going to be falling back to Kerbal because we didn't get circularized orbit. So this was a very difficult rocket to control. This was a very difficult design, and this design failed every single time because of the structural or because of the other sort of mechanical problems. Now I'm gonna try this again, but this time with awesome music. And while we're waiting for this launch, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like this video, and also leave a comment. What do you think? Why do you think this mission was so secretive? Was it because it was a failure, or was there something else going on? I've actually read comments and rumors about this mission being a nuclear mission, so maybe those rockets were actually carrying nuclear missiles, or were supposed to carry nuclear missiles into space. We don't really know, and we'll probably not know for a really long time. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and game you later, enjoy the rest of the mission, and bye-bye. Here comes the awesome music.